The AMC-35, also known under a manufacturer's designation Renault ACG-1, was a French medium cavalry tank of the later interwar era that served in the Second World War. It was developed as a result of the change of the specification that had led to the design of the AMC-34, calling for a vehicle that was not only well-armed and mobile but also well-armoured. Due to technological and financial problems, production was delayed and limited, with Belgium as the only user to create active units with the type. The AMC-35 was one of the few French tanks of the period featuring a two-man turret. Development. Renault had developed the AMC-34 according to the specifications of the Plan 1931. On the 26th of June 1934 these were changed. It was now demanded that the vehicle attain a maximum speed of 50 km/h and be immune to anti-tank guns. On the 7th of March 1936 a changed prototype was delivered by Renault, who requested that the vehicle would be accepted if it met the new specifications. After all, the AMC-34 had already been accepted for production, and this was nothing but a slightly changed variant. The French Materiel Commission, the Commission de Vincennes, became suspicious however by the fact that the factory designation had been changed from Renault year to Renault ACG. When the Commission inspected the prototype on the 9th of March, it indeed transpired that it was a completely new design. Accordingly, a complete test program was ordered, which was finished on the 27th of November. At that date the Commission judged that despite many changes the type was still unfit for service due to its mechanical unreliability. However, already in the spring the cavalry, worried by the German remilitarization of the Rhineland, had first ordered 17 vehicles and later expanded that order to 50. For political reasons the Commission did not dare to cancel the order. It accepted the type, noting that it would be highly advisable to test types in future before ordering them. The first vehicle was received by the cavalry on the 1st of November 1938. Description. The AMC-35 had about the same dimensions as the AMC-34, but the hull was longer at 4,572 mm to install a shortened 11.08 litres V4 180 horsepower version of the V6 engine used in the CHA-B1. There were 5 road wheels. The suspension used as springs horizontal rubber cylinders. At 42 km/h, the vehicle was slower than the specified speed. A 300-litre fuel tank allowed for a range of 160 km. The wading capacity was 60 cm and it could cross a trench of 2 meters. The 25 mm armor plates, riveted and bolted onto the chassis, did not offer the demanded protection. The prototype had a two-man APX-2 turret with the commander, loader on the left and the gunner on the right, fitted with a 25 mm SARF Fortress gun and a 7.5 mm Rifle machine gun, as the 25 mm anti-tank guns were needed in the Maginot Line. In the production series the 47 mm SAR-35 gun was used. The roughly octagonal APX-2 turret consisted of cast sections, welded, riveted and bolted together. The tank carried 120 gun rounds and 5,250 machine gun rounds. Production and export. The Belgian army had ordered 25 AMC-34 hulls with Renault on the 13th of September 1935 at a unit price of 360,000 French francs, together with a matching number of APX-2 turrets to be delivered by Bataillons-Châtillon, for a total project budget of 18.5 million Belgian francs. The hulls were indicated to be of a second series, an improved AMC-34, referring to the same line of development that would result in the AMC-35. Their delivery was supposed to commence in October. 1935. However, that month Renault started production of the original AMC-34. He was as yet unable to manufacture the improved version. Technological, financial and social problems. In December 1936, the military division of Renault was nationalized and restructured into the new AMX factory, ensured that for 1936 also, delivery would be delayed. As large orders had become unlikely, the project had a low priority. On 3 June 1937, the Belgian Minister of Defense, General Henry Denis, demanded that the single prototype be sent to Belgium. It was transported on 4 June. After testing between 23 and 27 August showed that its climbing abilities were poor, the Belgians decided that the 7 tanks intended for the chasseurs Ardennes were unnecessary and reduced the order accordingly to 18. The arrival of the prototype had caused a political row. However, politicians from the right feared it would antagonize Hitler and so endanger Belgian neutrality. Those from the left wanted only purely defensive weapons. As deliveries failed to materialize, in December 1937 it was decided to annul the order completely, to accept a contractual fine of 4 million francs and to redirect the remaining budget to the production of homemade T-13 tank destroyers. This outcome, however, embarrassed the French government. It pressured Renault to accept a new arrangement. Early in 1938 it transpired that the Renault factory had in its possession the materials to build the original total of 75 tanks. Out of these, stock parts sufficient for about 60 tanks had already been manufactured. Assembly had started on about 50 vehicles. It was agreed on the 21st of April 1938 to complete 35 vehicles, 10 to be delivered to Belgium including the prototype, the counter value of its contractual fine. Belgium also was to receive 5 sets of reserve parts and 8 armor sets. The new contract was signed on 15 June. It stipulated that the Belgian tanks would be delivered prior to 31 July. At that moment the French cavalry no longer itself intended to use the type and advised that priority should be given to the Belgian order. Renault had asked permission for this on 6 May, but on 2 June the French Ministry of Defense responded that the terms of the original agreements should be followed. These entailed a split delivery of batches of 10 at a time. First 7 tanks for France, followed by 3 for Belgium. Series production only started in November 1938 and actual delivery of the first 3 vehicles to Belgium was delayed till 30 March 1939. The second batch was exported in May and the final 3 vehicles arrived on 7 August. In 1938 the turrets also were delivered. As there was now a surplus of 15, these were used on fortifications, 13 of these on coastal defense pillboxes. Another 2 turrets were installed on pillboxes at Remouchamps where a fortress was initially intended to be built, but due to the lack of funds only 2 casemates were constructed. The turrets were equipped by Belgium with a different armament. Instead of the French SA-35 gun, a Belgian FRC 47mm gun was fitted. This closely related type had a barrel that was 15mm shorter. Also the machine gun was different, an optionally coaxial 7.65mm rechambered Hotchkiss 08-15 mg. The Belgian turrets were produced at Nantes. The APX-2B, which had the diascope on the left side, moved to the facet behind, because the drum magazine for the 7.65mm Maximo 8-15 machine gun made it impossible to look through it in the original position. Older sources incorrectly claimed that a 13.2mm Hotchkiss machine gun was fitted. An armor plate was welded over the hull. They were rebuilt again by the SEM between September 1939 and February 1940. For France also, production continued after the 1st of November 1938, with final assembly at AMX. In March 1939 the original order of 17 was finished. At the beginning of the Second World War a number of 22 had been reached. Production then accelerated. 3 were built in September, 9 in October, 8 in November. For this production all remaining materials were used, apparently to fulfill the original order. When in December the Belgian army asked for the delivery of the spare parts, as it needed some tanks in working order to allow a single platoon to take part in the winter maneuvers, Renault was unable to provide these. In January 1945 were produced. Production was then discontinued for a total of 57. 10 had been exported to Belgium. 47 remained in France where they are listed in this number in the spring of 1940. It is unclear whether this includes prototypes and project tanks, and how the number is to be reconciled with the total order of 50. After the war it has for some time been thought that the total production had been 175 for France, 25 for Belgium. This mistake had its origins in the events during the infamous process of Riem, where the Vichy regime indicted many for the presumed failure in preparing the French army for war. The accused, eager to show that French tank production was in fact much higher than that of Germany, estimated the AMC-35 production at 75, apparently adding the number of the Belgian AMC-34 order to the order for France. Later writers, assuming that 75 was the number of tanks intended for France, repeated this mistake and added another 25 Belgian tanks. Operational history. Belgium. When all 9 hulls had at last arrived in Belgium, it was soon discovered that engine, transmission and suspension wear was excessive. In January 1940 the 2 tanks that were in the worst condition were selected for transport to the arsenal of Etterbeek, to be cannibalized to keep the others running. 1 was used for driver training. The 8 remaining tanks were concentrated in the escadron d'Auto-blindé-du Corps de Cavalerie, literally the armored car squadron of the Cavalry Corps, which was created on the 1st of September 1939 at Wortmal-Boitsfort. The term Auto-blindé-Luge-Panzerwagen, or heavy armored car, was used to avoid the politically sensitive char tank. The unit then moved to Ghent for its first training, gradually receiving more vehicles from Cairns. Later it moved back to Brussels. The squadron had 3 platoons, 1 platoon, staff and services, and 2 platoons of 4 tanks each. The personnel were a mixture of soldiers of the 2nd Lancers Regiment and the Francophone 1st Guides Regiment, both units sharing the same barracks at Etterbeek. When war broke out on the 10th of May, the driver training tank was united with the 7 others to bring the squadron to its organic strength of 8. These fought against the German army between 17 and the 27th of May 1940. 4 were destroyed by 37mm pack fire when counter-attacking. 2 broke down and 2 were surrendered to the German on the 28th of May 1940 when the Belgian army put down its weapons. The Museum of the Army in Brussels shows a single turret taken from one of the 2 pillboxes that defended the harbour of Zeebrugge. Report of Bruges-Zeebrugge. The turret is property of the city of Bruges, which loaned it to the Army Museum at Brussels for 99 years. France. At first the French tanks did not equip any units. No crews were trained to man the type. After the German breakthrough at Sedan, it was decided on the 15th of May to send the entire tank material reserve to the front line. Several ad hoc units were hastily formed. First, 12 AMC-35s were used to equip the 11E groupement, the cavalry. Then 5 even more informal corps francs motorisés were formed, each to be equipped with 7 tanks, but only 5 AMC-35s could at first be made ready for them. 7 more were later delivered. The crews reported that the materiel was unreliable and suffered from an extremely short range in rough terrain. The CFMs fought a delaying battle between the rivers Seine and Loire. In the Anglophone literature, the AMC-35 is often portrayed as a major failed chance for France to turn the tide against Germany. Its two-man turret is then seen as better adapted to the demands of modern maneuver warfare. E.g., armor historian Brian Terence White judged the type very favorably. One of the most advanced French tanks for its size, in that as well as being equipped with a good gun, it had a two-man turret, with all the advantages in command it conferred. Somewhat surprisingly, for in retrospect this seems to have been one of the best pro-war French light tank designs. Only 100 were built. The type can, however, also be interpreted as an excellent example of the design constraints that forced France to adopt one-man turrets on its other tanks. The price for the AMC-35's roomy turret was an unreliable and, for the medium tank role, woefully under-armored vehicle. The wreck of an AMC-35 has been salvaged and restored at the Musée des Blindés at Saumur, where it has been displayed since 2006. Germany. Vehicles captured by Germany during the fall of France were used by the Wehrmacht as the PZK-PFW AMC-738 for driver training projects. One prototype was built of a smoke-laying vehicle. An AMC-35 hull was rebuilt and fitted with 19 containers, each with 165 liters of smoke fluid that could be sprayed into the air by a compressor. One AMC-35 hull was built as a 75 mm tank destroyer, the Renault ACG-2. The original AMC-35 was therefore in French sources of the period often called the Renault ACG-1.